Our next two storytellers will share their stories related to medical necessity. Their experiences are different, but have a common thread in how these decisions can sometimes be made for you because of health complications. Shannon Crissey and her husband made the decision to end her pregnancy after a 17-week ultrasound showed serious fetal abnormalities. Edie needed a life-saving abortion due to pregnancy complications related to being intersex. For those who don't know, intersex is when a person is born with both male and female characteristics. Welcome, Shannon and Edie.
Hello. Thank you for being here and listening to my story. I am 33 years old and have a 3-year-old daughter named Margot. Yeah, there she is. And my husband, Schaefer, he's out in the crowd. Hey, honey. We had attempted to get pregnant for nearly a year with our second child, when unfortunately, after carrying the pregnancy for 18 weeks, we learned the baby had fatal abnormalities and we would have to terminate. I'm not a very quiet person. In fact, I have no secrets at all. As soon as we learned that our baby was not going to survive, I started talking. I told everyone, my family, my friends, my coworkers. I think I even managed to slip it into conversation with the poor UPS guy. I did, it was bad. It was like an itch I couldn't scratch. In the weeks following, I would find myself with friends desperately hoping someone would bring it up so I could talk about it more. I'm not sure why I needed this, but after a month or two, that itch went away. And as I began to heal both physically and emotionally from our trauma, I found that I didn't need to talk about it as much. I became quiet. And now, after 6 months, I don't want to talk about it at all. We're trying again for another baby, and I just want to focus on that and get on with our lives. I don't really want to be here talking to all of you about this. But that's exactly what they have on us, the anti-abortion groups and the protesters. They get to be loud, and we tend to be quiet. Because I don't want to talk about the worst day of my life anymore. But because of Amelia and the Shout Your Abortion campaign, that's all starting to change. Not just for people who are glad for their abortion because they weren't ready to be a mom, but for those of us who are glad for our abortion because it took away the suffering that our babies would have endured. For those of us who chose to take on that suffering by making the worst decision of our lives. Fortunately for my husband and I, we live in Seattle. We have fantastic insurance. We live in West Seattle and drove 15 minutes to our regular medical provider where we paid $150 total for a surgery that takes 2 days. $150, that's it. It absolutely terrifies me to think about what my husband and I would have had to go through had we decided to live in Texas or Alabama or North Dakota instead of Seattle. We would have had to watch another ultrasound of our dying child. We would have had to wait 24 hours before making our decision and then driven 11 to 12 hours or more to obtain a procedure that insurance almost certainly wouldn't have covered. We would have had to find days of childcare for our daughter. And that would have been hard on us, a middle-class married white couple with families who support us. So many women do not have the kind of privilege that we do. And among the support system that I'm eternally grateful for are my 2 sisters. My sister Brenna struggled with infertility for years before finally having her daughter Reagan through IVF. So she understands loss and provided a lot of support. And my sister Katie, who also struggled with infertility, but as you can see, they got that sorted out. But more importantly to my situation is that Katie is an OBGYN. And she was able to tell me, without mincing words, what the outcomes would have been for our baby. The baby would almost certainly be stillborn, or worse, live for a few minutes only to die because her lungs weren't developed enough to breathe or to even intubate. She described babies who lived for 3 or 4 years on hospice before finally dying. She describes devastated parents trying to decide if they would sign a do not resuscitate form for their infant on life support. These are real outcomes that happen in real life every day. They are not hypotheticals. We don't want to hear these stories, but we have to. Because people need to understand why this delicate medical decision cannot be left to elected officials. We don't want to talk about it, but I have to. Thank you.